Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Exploring the Energy Markets with Analysts. I'm here today in Hyderabad attending the Energy Technology Meet organized by Center for High Technology and Bharat Petroleum. For India, refining has been always a big industry. India has aspirations to take refining capacity to 9 to 10 million barrels per day. Big and bold ambitions. But we are also hearing that there is a big ambition to enter into the petrochemicals market. Today's episode is to explore petrochemicals market, and I have with me Rajesh Chopra. Rajesh Chopra has joined and working with me as a chief PetChem analyst. Welcome, Rajesh.
Thank you.
And what we really want to explore his knowledge, his insights from long years in the industry. So maybe before we begin, Rajesh, it would be useful that you can give a short summary of your global experiences.
Thanks, Mukesh. I'm excited to be part of Analyst. Yes, as you said, I have close to 30 plus years experience in the industry, which is across both refining and petrochemicals. I moved to the national oil company in India, Indian Oil Corporation, where I spent close to 10 plus years. And most of that was in their new refinery, the grassroots refinery that was coming up in Panipat.
Yeah, and we were both over there.
Yes, and we were both together there. And 2007, so after spending 10 plus years, I decided to move to Shell, where I got the opportunity to work in Shell Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur. Thereafter, I moved to Shell Netherlands in Amsterdam. And that's also the time when I made a switch from refining to the petrochemicals. And after spending close to 5 years in Amsterdam, I moved to Bangalore, India office in the technology center, Bangalore. In chemicals, I specialize in styrene monomer and propylene oxide part of the technology.
Fantastic, Rajesh. I know you use some words, propylene oxide, styrene monomers. I think there's a lot of jargon in the petrochem industry. My goal with this, conversation is to really break it down and make it a little simple for people. So why not we start with the question, when people use petchem market, right, this word, petrochemical, it's a very broad word. How would you define so that somebody builds a better understanding from petchem from different aspects?
Good question. We have to simplify it. We can break it down to, let's say, 4 different layers. The 4 petrochemical feedstock, which is naphtha and ethane, propane, and the NGLs. From those feedstock, we get down to the basic building blocks, the basic chemicals, which are like ethylene, propylene, benzene, which is then further derivatized to intermediate molecules, which then get converted into the end user product that we all use in our daily life.
Let me ask you a different question. In all these, 4 layers, tell me about some of the feedstocks in the petrochemical market, and if you can make it more relevant for current times.
Again, good question for somebody who wants to understand petchem. So typically, naphtha has been the main or the major feedstock for the petchem industry. But with the shale gas and shale oil boom that happened in states about 2 decades ago, we start to see many of the gas-related or the NGL molecules becoming feedstock for the petchem industries, like ethane, propane, other NGL liquids, and these have become advantage feedstock for the petchem industry because of the higher yields of ethylene and propylene that we can get by directly feeding these gas and NGL molecules into the crackers versus naphtha, where in addition to the ethylene and propylene that we get, we also get other heavier molecules, which again are needed, but yeah, in terms of demand, the highest demand is for the ethylene and the propylene derivatives.
Okay. So I want to ask a lot of questions, but given we are at the energy technology meet, given we are in India,
Yes.
maybe brief now and then more details later. I want to dig deeper. What's your view of the growth or the evolution of petrochemicals market in India? What feedstock India uses, what products India makes? Anything you can share briefly, and then of course we'll dig deeper.
We are attending ETM and it is very relevant for the Indian petchem industry. While rest of the world is facing a difficult market, a margin pressure due to the oversupply situation that we have in the global market, India is actually sitting at a very, I would say, sweet spot, a very good spot, because of the rising economy. The demand of the petrochemical products in India will continue to rise. Let me give you some numbers. Historically, China petchem industry has been growing at an average rate of about 7-8%. When we look at India, now India in last 3-4 years have been growing at 8 to 10%. And typically, petchem industry growth is very much linked to the GDP growth of that country. It's not just GDP growth, it's more than the GDP growth.
So it drives the GDP growth quite often times.
It is.
I wanted to ask you about, we live in the world of energy transition,
Yes.
and as I understand, like the naphtha, it can go into gasoline blending, it can go into fertilizers, it can also go into the petrochemical markets. But as we do the energy transition and the road transport fuel demand goes down, do you believe that naphtha becomes more available and again becomes a feedstock compared to the gas side? How do you see the feedstock, the liquid versus the gas, which was a winner in the past, which will be a winner in the future?
Good question. Naphtha being available because of reduction in the gasoline demand, I think that is something, a fact. We cannot deny that part. Now, whether that naphtha is an advantage feedstock for the petchem industry is something, yeah, we have to see. We can debate about it. And that's because of the different product slates that we get if we use naphtha only as a feedstock in the cracker. At this point of time, gas and NGL, I mean gas, when I say gas, it's the ethane, and the NGL molecules are the advantage feedstock because of the higher yields and the lower per unit cost of production of the base chemicals using these advantage feedstocks. Now, going forward, as long as we continue to have the advantage feedstocks like the gas and NGL that I said before, naphtha would not come in that category.
Okay.
And as and when we start to see, when the supply of these advantage molecules gets restricted or starts to shrink, or in the regions, because not every region in the world has access to these advantage feedstock. For example, Middle East has it, US has it, and they also export it to different regions. But not every region gets it. So for those regions that do not have access to these advantage feedstock, I think naphtha will continue to be the main feedstock.
Okay, numbers. What naphtha makes less or more? What gas makes less or more? Any basic numbers you want to share?
Start with the lighter feedstock first. So with ethane as feedstock, we get very high ethylene yield, like 80% plus. We'll also get a little bit of hydrogen, but most of it will be ethylene. We go to the propane, which is a feed for the PDH units. There we'll get a very high yield of propylene, again 80 kind of plus. As we move to the heavier feedstocks, the naphtha, there the ethylene yields would be typically 25, it can also go to 35, 40%, and then the propylene yields would be somewhere between 15, 20%, and then the rest of the product slate would be a mix of heavier components,
Okay.
the butanes and the bens.
I wanted to ask you, I've been attending some of the sessions in the energy technology meet, and there's a lot of talk around crude to chemicals. I even heard some of the industry, senior executives talking about crude to cash. It's not crude to chemicals, it's crude to cash.
We should be looking at crude to money. Previously, I used to come and tell, let's go to crude to pharma. We are trying to do. Crude to chemicals we are doing, crude to pharma we are doing, but what is more important is crude to money. Percentage-wise, I can tell you, in HMEL, if you put only polyethylene, polypropylene, we are 16-17%, but you put all the chemicals, we are 30%. No use. I don't want that 30%. I want that money. Where is the money? So this integration should be thought only in terms of what you get.
So, when somebody says crude to chemicals, what does it really mean?
Again, good question, Mukesh. Yes, this is something that there was a lot of buzz around crude to chemical in the ETM. When we say crude to chemical, that means increasing the yield of chemical products from that crude feedstock. So
is it really putting straight crude to?
It is possible, but not the entire crude.
Okay.
So the lighter components of that crude can go directly to a separate cracker furnace, and then the middle stream and the heavier stream, you have to do further work, and that's where the technology being developed by various licensors. And after those treatments, then those can go to the crackers, or they can be cracked further to get more of petrochemicals.
So what you mean by is that typically when we use crude, the main product is gasoline, diesel and jet, and some of the byproducts go into the petrochemical feedstock market. As we go towards crude to chemicals, what you are indicating is there will be higher drive towards converting the crude into those feedstocks, as we need less to go toward the road transport fuels. Is that right?
That is indeed correct. And just to give a few examples of the crude to chemicals units that have been actually constructed, I'm aware of one unit by ExxonMobil in Singapore that claims to have roughly 40 to 50% of chemical yield. And there is another one in China, Zhenjiang, ZPC, that also has a chemical yield of around this 40-50%. That's what is reported.
Some key takeaways from the energy technology meet on what have you heard on this crude to chemicals drive?
What we have heard in the ETM now is a kind of second phase of crude to chemical technology. Yes, there are a couple of licensors. I heard Exxon's, Aramco, Lummus, who are developing this phase 2 of the crude to chemical technologies. And when I say phase 2, that means increasing the chemical yield from crude being processed in that complex to as high as 70 to 80%.
So what I understand is, what you're sharing is that there is a next phase of maximization of the yields to maximize the petrochemicals. Now, I believe that these technologies, these plants are not cheap. These are very capex and operating cost intensive, and they need a lot of, I would say, very competent analysts, very competent engineers, right? Do you believe it's the right thing for India? Can India do it? Or should India go towards this big phase, or India's refining should stay with doing what it is very good at, which is making the road transport and the typical refined products?
Let me try to answer it slightly differently, Mukesh. When we crude to chemical technologies, as you rightly said, are very capex and opex intensive. And that's been the challenge for the technology developing companies to bring it down. And what we have heard in the ETM is that they are trying to do that, and they probably have been successful in doing that. But the proof is still to come. Once those technologies get deployed, I think that's when we will get to know the claims being made by the technology developers, how far they are able to realize those claims.
So you say India should actually definitely go ahead. And I also heard in, Indian Oil, you and I work for Indian Oil. Indian Oil R&D has made some big strides in that area. I heard of INMAX technology, which tries to maximize propylene. Any words on some of the Indian technologies or Indian players who are doing research in this field? Anything to share?
Well, that's a very, very interesting point, Mukesh. Now, R&D historically, Indian companies, be it public sector or private sector, have been spending money, but not a lot. At least that's what I know. But I was very happy to see the developments made by Indian Oil as well as HPCL, because we also had a session from HPCL R&D team where they showcased the technologies or the PSA that they have developed of their own and which they are trying to install.
HP2 PSA something.
Yes, HP2 PSA. That's right. So I'm very, very happy to see that now the Indian companies are developing technologies, and not just developing, but they are deploying.
So I think you gave me your next question actually, Rajesh, that I had the opportunity to meet. There was an Indian diaspora event where Honorable Oil Minister along with the senior secretaries and CEOs of the Indian companies together with a lot of global Indian CEOs outside sat down and we talked about the PetChem market. As a PetChem expert who has done it yourself and who knows a lot of the details, what 3 things you would like to share with the Indian leaders?
Yeah, very, very good question. I think very, very relevant as well.
Yeah.
So I would say first, with respect to the PetChem market, India needs to build more PetChem capacity. I think that's not optional, especially considering the drive, the government drive towards self-reliance, the Atmanirbhar Bharat. You cannot continue to rely on exports coming from outside. So going forward, India needs to build additional PetChem industry. The second one, let's not go in a very traditional way of looking at PetChem industry. Also look at it from future, to make it a future proof. Secure advantage feedstock wherever we can. I heard GAIL is going for a propane dehydrogenation unit, PDH unit in Maharashtra, close to Alibag. I think that is a very good beginning. And those kind of initiative has to go, because those are the advantage feedstock will continue to give us the PetChem products which are competitive.
Okay.
Number 3 would be, do not just go for commodity. Get into specialty grades. And when I say commodity, it's like PE, PP, these are considered
polyethylene, polypropylene,
are commodity grades. And similarly, there are other commodity grades as well. So we should not, when we are building, we should not just limit ourselves to commodity product. but we should go further into the specialty differentiated products, because those are much
Any
more...
examples? Like,
Well, I can give one example based on my experience with Shell. It's like one way of derivatizing propylene is to make polypropylene, but then you can also make propylene oxide and derivatives out of it. And when we go in that segment, then it opens up, you can go in the commodity grades, but you can also go into some specialty grades, which maybe the volumes are lesser, but the margins are higher. So that's one example, and there can be many other examples. I think we also heard about some of the industry leaders talking about going into APIs, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, because there the margins are very high. So those kind of thinking, we should hear more and more from our decision makers, be it industry leaders or in the government, the government officials. We have to go into the specialty. We can't just relax and say we have commodity grades.
okay, so I think you said more capacity. You talked about more diversification of the technology manufacturing, not just the typical naphtha cracking to propylene, but PDH, like what China has done. And third thing is more, don't just focus on commodity, but go into petrochemical, specialty chemicals.
And maybe if I interrupt a little bit, together with that third element, the R&D part, investing in the R&D also become equally important. Because when we go into those segments, we also need to build capability, our own capability on research and development.
Well, that's a fantastic way, and I started Analyst with this mission to build the competency and the understanding of these complex markets, and of course you are with me, and I did a session with Chairman in Oil, Arvinder Sahani, and he shared that his ambition is to triple the petrochemical capacity. So I think certainly we are making good strides on the capacity side, but it's the second and third order where I see some different. That, I wanted to shift gears because I think we talk in India about Atmanirbhar Bharat, and without petrochemicals, I don't think it's possible. I don't know when people in China and the leaders in China sit on the table, whether they say Atmanirbhar China or Global Nirbhar China, because China is was factory of the world, growing at a very high rate, and I believe the petrochemical was even growing at a much faster rate. So what few things you can tell based on your personal experience and what you've heard in the ETM, if you have heard, about China's petchem industry, how it has grown, and some thoughts about the future, Rajesh?
Thanks.
I know it's a big question, but I know you can take it.
Let me have a go at it. So China has been the growth engine for the petchem industry for last many decades. To an extent that there are many petchem units, there are many naphtha crackers that were set up in countries like Korea to supply the products into the China market. So China has been a big consumer of the petchem products. So what has changed in China in last decade or kind of 15 kind of year period, they also went on for a self-sufficiency drive. So they started to build a lot of big integrated petchem complexes of their own. So with the result, now China has reduced its import dependency significantly. If we just look at these commodity products, polyethylene, polypropylene, I think they have reduced or brought it down to very, very low level. There is still some imports that are happening, but it's very, very small compared to what they used to do, let's say, about a decade ago. Another thing that has happened in China is post-COVID, and the demand has slowed down significantly. It's not.
And I think China overproduced during COVID.
So overproduced, and then we also had some real estate crisis. The real estate company that Evergrande They went
construction
bankrupt. So the
industry is not
construction
great.
industry, which was a big consumer of these petchem products, that went flat. So a lot of capacity came up in China. On the demand side, it has slowed down, which is causing a mismatch even in the domestic demand supply in China.
So overcapacity, probably petrochemical feedstock advantage. And I'm an oil analyst, so I watch a lot of the oil trade flow data, and I can share some numbers or some views. I look at Vortexa data a lot, and what I've noticed is that it is as if there is a pipeline from US to China about the gas side of the feedstocks, and China has done huge propane dehydrogenation to make the propylene routes. Of course, now with the slower demand, propylene PDH units are probably running lower utilization between 60s or 70%, right? So there is a bit of decoupling happening between China and the US on the feedstock side. I've also seen a lot of stocks of the NGLs and propane actually building up in US because China is not buying those. So in this changing landscape, do you see that in US and China trade truce, how does it affect India? Is it good for India? Is it not so good for India? Or can India take that advantage from the US? Anything you can shed light on from an expert's angle would be useful.
That's a complex geopolitical issue, okay? Well, one thing we have to see is the geography. So US, China, proximity, distance versus versus US and India. So anything which is at a distance
via the Pacific route.
Via the Pacific will take longer and will be more expensive. So if the China-US truce does not happen and China stops or China does not get access to these NGL, the ethane molecules from US, theoretically, yes, it is available to India, but then India also has to see, one thing is the cost, and secondly, for how long can they depend on that feedstock? Would you want to build or tailor your, the complexes to bring in something which you are not sure of?
Okay, you're saying the shale growth. We're
Yes.
already seeing, I remember when I was in Houston on the Shell trade floor in 2018, the US shale growth or the overall crude production growth was somewhere 1.5, 1.7. Now, I worked at Rystad Energy as well, and huge granular data detail we used to do. And the US growth was somewhere being talked around 200, 300 kilobarrels per day. And of course, there are a lot of challenges, and Trump's drill baby drill probably hasn't happened yet, or not sure will happen. So you're saying that it may not be prudent to build dependence, which leads to my next point, that I want to change gears and ask you a question about a lot of refinery engineers in India, a lot of refining analysts in India. PetChem is certainly a growth side. What would you say to a growing engineer in a refinery or an analyst in a refinery to one day become a very solid petrochemical expert like you?
I would say only two things.
Okay.
Yeah. The first is, doesn't matter where you are, wherever you are in a refinery or petchem, continue to learn and do well in that area, that segment. To me, that is a fundamental focus that everybody should have. The second thing would be, when you are working in any area in a refinery or petchem, don't just look at your area. While you need to be excellent, you need to do well in that area, but also have a broader overview of what's happening in and around your unit. So have an integrated view. Also get to know where your feedstock is coming, where your products are going, what is happening in the market. So don't limit yourself to just technical, but also be aware of what is happening on the feedstock as well as the product market side, because that will give you a lot of insights around many times the decisions that are being taken in that refinery or petrochemical complex. You would be able to make much more sense out of those decisions if you are fully aware of the global picture.
Well, I heard the same thing from many people, and I think probably a good point is a good point, and it needs worth repeating many times, is be very good in your technical area of expertise, but don't ignore the market understanding, because that will drive a much better curiosity and questions. So go build market competency and not just focus on the technical competencies.
Exactly.
I know, Rajesh, discussions as well, and I made a point that to really benefit from the scale and the size of the Indian asset base, we need to really superimpose a strong and robust global trading network, because we live in a world of what I call global spares and local scares. So we have to choose spare or a scare. Building spare capacity is everybody's worry because it's capital intensive, but we can manage the risk of building too much spare, and we need to build some spare by connecting the spare to the global markets through a strong trading networks. And I was heartened to hear from, again, Chairman Indian Oil, also some of the other CEOs of the Indian companies, that there is an aggressive play to go into the trading side of the market. And I would say we should not just think of Atmanirbhar Bharat. I made a point, we should think of Vishv Vyapari Bharat. We know India was once a golden giant in trading, so I believe we can achieve those goals by first building strength. Thank you, Rajesh.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
It was a very good session, starting from very basics, and we explored what PetChem means. You told us about the feedstock, to the intermediates, to the base chemicals, to the end products. We talked a lot about the technology choices which India should do. You made some good points about what's happening on the China side of the market and how US and China sort of petrochemical linkage can be an advantage for India. Fantastic conversation. I look forward to more hearing from you. I think this is a fantastic engagement at the Energy Technology Meet, and probably we'll see you again, and we'll be together again at the India Energy Week, which is coming up somewhere in the early 2026. With that, I conclude the session. Thanks again, and keep watching, keep learning. That's the mission of Analyst, to really drive competency, knowledge among young, among seniors, and anybody who engages with the energy markets. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Analyst. Empowering analysts, transforming markets.